Hey, what are you doing all the way over there? Honestly, sometimes I think you get up to no good just so I'll make videos about games in exceptionally niche genres. Well, you know what? I love ya. Mwah. Let's make that happen. Video games. Some of them let you stack blocks, others let you freely cause general mayhem in realistically simulated cities. Some let you shoot robots at a quarter a pop, others let you roll the dice on possibly collecting images of scantily clad ladies for payments ranging from $5 to $100. There's a little something for everybody. Truly anything goes when it comes to developing a piece of interactive electronic media, though some concepts are so fun and accessible that their style of gameplay becomes an entire genre. And if that genre is particularly open-ended, suddenly you find that it spurs off subgenres. The genre of racing games is definitely one such concept. I mean, you've got arcade racers, simulation racers, kart racers, but one particularly niche and underutilized subgenre that was conceived in the late 90s/early aughts and effectively died during the same time frame is the subgenre of 3D on-foot racing games. Oh, I get it. You're a sock, and you're talking about games revolving around being on foot. I see how it is. Very clever. Get your mind out of the gutter, Fingy. What? I didn't say anything dirty. You get your mind out of the gutter. The internet has done irreparable damage to my imagination. Alongside the birth of 3D platformers, I guess it made sense to some developers to take the mechanics of controlling a character in a 3D environment and framing it within the very streamlined racing genre. However, unlike 3D platformers, these games weren't as obvious to make. Even before the advent of 3D graphics, platformers and vehicle-based racing games were very popular, thus translating them to 3D was a no-brainer. On-foot racers were somewhat of a gamble, despite on paper sounding like an appealing and accessible way to make a hit. You don't have to create massive levels to explore or write any kind of relevant story like you'd be expected to for a regular old single-player platformer, and you get to introduce an original cast of protagonistic characters without delving into the complex mechanics of a fighting game or developing a variety of modes for a party game. Now, there are still plenty of 2D on-foot racing games made to this day, like Speed Runners and Ultimate Chicken Horse, but I think 3D ones are just so much more fascinating to look back on. The heart wants what it can't have, and so far as I'm aware, nobody's making 3D on-foot racers anymore. I was able to find 7 3D on-foot racers to look back on here today. Well, technically 8, but one of them was the zoo race.
He's coming, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming.
Yeah, maybe some other time. For now, let's start things off with what was perhaps the first of its kind, Sonic R. Oh, Sonic the Hedgehog. They could slap your smug mug on the logo of QuickBooks Pro and your fans would still play and examine it more meticulously than a trucker hauling 2 tons of nitroglycerin down the Grand Canyon. This being the case, Sonic R is definitely more heavily discussed online than any of the other games we'll be talking about today. I'm going to count that as a blessing, because if there's one thing I don't want to do, it's discuss my opinions of Sonic online. So to do something unique while keeping this segment brief, I'll review Sonic R in the form of a haiku. The graphics are nice. The controls are just awful. The music? Poggers.
Poggers!
That's one down. Next, let's take a look at another 3D on-foot racer set in a pre-existing mascot platformer franchise, Rayman Arena. Now, Rayman Arena is just the name they gave this game in localization. In its native territory of Europe, the game is called Rayman M. Huh. You know, for Sonic R, I assume the R stands for racing. But Rayman M? Somehow I feel like that was a miscommunication error.
Okay, boss, we gotta have a unique subtitle for this new Rayman game. What should it be? Your word is law. You know best. We'll print whatever you say. This game should be called, Rayman, Rayman M? Perfect. Great name. That's why you're the boss. No takebacks. That's the official title now. Bye. Ooh, what the deuce?
Unlike all the other games we're covering today, Rayman Arena released across multiple platforms. PS2, Xbox, GameCube, Windows, IBM, Mac, my sister's Lite-Brite. Heck, it even had a D-Make called Rayman Rush on PS1. I'll be checking out the GameCube version, as it is my understanding that it and the Xbox version are considered the best ports, and GameCube games are easier to emulate than Xbox games.
Whoa, hold the phone. You're emulating all these games?
No, I spent thousands of dollars on like 6 separate retro consoles on the secondhand market, along with each of these games' original discs and adapters capable of capturing footage from each of these ancient systems to be uploaded onto the internet.
Okay, good.
This game's graphics and presentation are really great. This is essentially a Rayman 2 spin-off. Most of the assets are taken straight from that game. The gameplay itself is good. I mean, it controls fine enough, but on the whole, races are too easy. No two characters really play differently from one another. There's no increasing speed or momentum, so there's no incentive to master the mechanics either. I suspect Ubisoft knew this game wouldn't cut it as a standalone racing title, so they compensated by adding a combat mode. It's functional, but nowhere near as much fun as racing. If there's one single aspect of this game that stands as an example-setting great idea, it's that each racer has a theme song that plays when they're in first place. This is really cool, and it incentivizes trying other characters, because even though every theme song slaps, they all get annoying after a while. In fact, in single player, I'd sometimes let my opponent stay ahead of me a little bit just so I could hear a different song. And even though I was letting the CPU win, it still felt really satisfying to eventually pass them and hear my character's theme song kick in again. And crossing the finish line and watching your character get subsumed body and soul into a world of eternal torment is very rewarding.
Well, Rayman Arena was definitely better than Sonic R, but still not a glowing example of a great 3D on-foot racing game, you know? Kart racers have Mario Kart, platform fighters have Smash Bros. Will we find an equivalent for 3D on-foot racers? Well, maybe a good place to look would be what was perhaps the last one to be published by a major studio, Mad Dash Racing, only on Xbox.
This game comes to us courtesy of Eidos and Crystal Dynamics, the same folks behind Tomb Raider and Gex.
Show me the money, baby.
Son of a gun, he's in this game. There's a story here, believe it or not, with cutscenes and everything. Seems this evil wizard fella, Hex, has offered all these kooky characters a chance at winning his magic wand. All they have to do is gather meteorite chunks on this secluded island, which he plans on using towards some evil end. Why they have to compete in races full of obstacles, alternate paths, and weapons in order to collect said chunks? I have no idea. This setup would have worked better for a typical Banjo-Kazooie-like collectathon, come to think of it. But so the story is lacking, big deal. How's everything else? Well, the controls are pretty tight. You can run, jump, attack, use items, charge, drift, go into a fit of Mario Party like palm destroying just to swim or climb, get stuck on weird geometry with no hope of getting out without resetting. Yeah, okay, this game's pretty rough around the edges. It's commendable just how vast they made each of these levels, but they go on for way too long. The graphics are appealing in a way too, but there's little to no cohesion in the designs of the characters. I'm all for having eclectic casts and games, but most of the time, I just don't know what they were going for here. The playable characters are all-or-nothing fairy tale, sci-fi, or modern-day Looney Tunes. The game takes place on an island full of labs and whatnot, yet the villain is a wizard with a magic wand and not an evil scientist, which would have made more sense. And the island natives look like this. And just to keep adding to the salmagundi that is this game's clashing sensibilities, the soundtrack is made up of alternate rock and hip-hop songs from real-world artists. Guess that explains why this game's not available to download on Microsoft's online stores. Licensing's probably a bear. Oh, and speaking of sound design, did I mention that the characters in this game never shut up? Every race, without fail, all the racers cross the finish line around the same time and all speak over one another in a cacophony of Gexisms. In retrospect, this should have been a Gex racing game. His whole shtick is traveling through television, right? So make the whole thing revolve around a Survivor-type reality show where all the contestants come from differently styled cartoons. I mean, heck, even if they thought the Gex brand wasn't hot at the time, they should have at least stuck with some sort of cohesive setting. Besides, is Gex really more insufferable than this warthog they arbitrarily deemed the face of the franchise?
I can clear a room in 5 seconds.
So, all in all, Mad Dash Racing is fun enough, but messy, and definitely not to on-foot racers as Mario Kart is to kart ones. Well, since we tried looking back at the latest game from a major publisher, let's look at the earliest, following Sonic R, Running Wild for the PS1, from the producers of Crash Bandicoot. Whoa!
Alright, since I just pointed out how Mad Dash Racing probably should have utilized Crystal Dynamics' Gex IP, I'm just gonna come right out and ask why Universal didn't make this a Crash Bandicoot game. Now, I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that it might have been because Naughty Dog were still the owners of the Crash IP at the time, and they very infamously considered the Crash Racing spin-off they would eventually go on to make as the shark jump of the series for them. not to mention the last Crash game they'd ever make before transferring ownership to Universal. So perhaps Blue Shift and/or 949 pitched Running Wild to Universal as potentially being a Crash game, but Naughty Dog refused, so they just came up with a cast of stylistically similar characters. Well, slightly stylistically similar. But again, that's all conjecture. Gosh, I hate that I know there's an extremely specific set of people who are maybe a little too excited by this athletically built anthropomorphic animal cast with giant feet. I'm not the type of person to walk out of a bad movie just because I value knowledge despite how upsetting I might find it. Yet at the same time, I can't help but feel like I'd be leading a happier life if I didn't know stuff like this. Well, none of that really matters though, does it? What really matters is the gameplay. And I gotta tell ya, this game rocks! The controls are simple. Accelerate, jump, brake, use items. That's all you need. There are 3 viable strategies to getting into first place. Maintain speed by avoiding obstacles, take shortcuts wherever you can find them, and use pickup items to gain advantages. The items are always in the same places too, so you can devise strategies based on how well you know the maps. Some items only appear when certain groups of pickups are collected, so the game also incentivizes and rewards mastery of steering. Each character also has a different set of stats which give them unique advantages and disadvantages regarding how they race. Gwyn is my favorite as she reaches top speed fast and has great hang time when jumping, though she is more vulnerable to attacks. Design-wise though, I can take her or leave her. I get the joke, she's a bunny, but she looks like a hot babe with big ears. How many more of this exact type of character need to exist before this is officially an archetype? You know, I give these characters grief over the feelings they likely inspire in a very specific set of people. But honestly, while the characters in this game aren't anything special, they sure give Mad Dash Racing a run for its money.
A run for its money? Is that a race joke? Come on now, Thingy, I don't make race jokes, that's just bad taste.
There are unlockable characters too, who serve as bosses of sort that represent each map, who are really nothing to write home about. The main attraction here are the default racers, who are very obvious yet oddly endearing animal caricatures. Punk rock zebra, you know, cause odd colors and mohawk. We already went over the Playboy bunny here. A spandex-clad elephant with a Russian name. Both Russia and elephants have an association with circuses, so I guess that makes sense. Military ram, old, rough, protective yet adversarial. Yeah, checks out. Spanish matador bull. Does it get any more obvious than that? Kung Fu panda. I guess it does.
Wow. I will make no comment. As I said to Fingy earlier, I don't make race jokes. Anywho, Running Wild is a blast. But it doesn't have any kind of story mode, but I guess that doesn't keep it from being fun to play. It's definitely encouraging to find and play such an obscure game in such an obscure genre and come away happy, but there are still more games left to cover and we still need to find that exemplary title. Up next, let's look at another PS1 game, Maniacs, presented by FoxKids.com.
Yeah, apparently here in North America, for whatever reason, FoxKids.com sponsored the publication of this Micro Machines spin-off. Okay. I've never played any of the Micro Machines games, as they never really looked all that appealing to me. More like the type of minigame you'd groan to see show up when playing Mario Party or something. Regardless, I'll go in with an open mind. And wow, the story here is actually really neat. Apparently some mad scientist has this radical idea to shrink the Earth's population so as to extend our available resources. And he convinced this X-Men-like group of outcasts to act as test subjects for his shrinking/enhancing formula. And the races in this game are contextualized as endurance tests. I can dig it. Oh, and the racetracks are common household areas like a bathroom sink or a windowsill garden. Ah, that's brilliant. All of the individual racers have awesome backstories too, and their designs are awesome. I especially love Mesma. I'm a sucker for semi-creepy, bug-eyed characters with no mouths. Oh, and one of the racers is a rival mad scientist who messed up his own shrinking formula and now has no choice but to participate in these tests. That's incredible. And look, they even have Mama.
Mama?
Gosh, I haven't even gotten to the gameplay yet, and I am loving this so far. Well, let's waste no more time. Let's race already.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this game sucks.
It's exactly as I feared any given Micro Machines game would be, and worse. You've got to be so gosh darn exact with staying on the track. If for any reason you stumble outside the lines, you get teleported back to where you were before you did. I'm sorry, maybe this stay on the road gimmick works better with Pinewood Derby cars, but when I control a character in an open 3D space, even if it is a racing game, I feel compelled to explore a little.
Don't take a shortcut around this potted plant. My research will be inconclusive unless you exclusively run on the seeds.
If the story and characters of Micromaniacs were in a game that played more like Running Wild, it would be that ever-elusive Mario Kart equivalent. But hey, let's not give up the search just yet. There's still a couple more games left to try. Up next, let's check out Pen Triicelon for the Sega Dreamcast.
So unlike all the other games showcased in this video, Pen Triicelon is the only one made in Japan. And it is very obvious. It's obnoxiously zany, but at least the main cast have a cohesive motif. They're a bunch of funky penguin chimeras. A couple are just stylized penguins, but the others are fused with other animals like a shark, a walrus, a hippo, an octopus. It's definitely creative. Let's hop into a race now.
I don't make jokes. That's just hate. I don't make jokes.
Let's elect to ignore that colorful little bit of oh my gosh. This game is ostensibly a penguin simulator. Races are split into 3 separate but similar traversal styles: waddling, swimming, and belly sliding. There's a little bit of a learning curve to the rhythm of the controls, but I got used to it pretty quick. The game is actually pretty fun, all things considered. The only downside, well, I mean aside from, oh my gosh, is that some of these courses are cruel to navigate. There's this one spinning room part that's just a headache, and a swimming segment where you've got to go straight up that I could just not figure out properly.
You know, I'm starting to get tired of all these on-foot racers having some fatal flaw that boils down to one bad or mediocre aspect bringing the whole experience down. So far, Running Wild is still the best, and even it's held back by its lack of strong identity. Surely there's at least one that goes the extra mile in world building that also plays well and has well-designed courses. Ladies and gentlemen, here is our last hope of finding that genre-defining title, Iridium Runners for PlayStation 2.
Fun fact, did you know? Similarly to Rayman M, this game's title also came from a miscommunication error. You see, the game was initially going to be titled The Runners, but the game's spokesperson, former US President John F. Kennedy, was misheard when first revealing the title.
Mr. President, I understand you're advertising a new video game in the year 2008?
Yes, sir, I am.
What is the name of this game, Mr. President?
The title of this video game, Iridium Runners.
Iridium Runners?
Yeah, sure, man, like the periodic element, Iridium Runners.
Oh.
Yeah, that's fine, whatever. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must travel back to the year 1963 and write down the secret to time travel right after I take a drive in Dallas. Anywho, this game is a lot more subdued in style and character design, especially compared to the other wacky games we've seen up to this point, but it's still a cool, lofty concept. Iridium Runners takes place in the distant future where corporatism has gone too far. See, the races you get up to here are sponsored events courtesy of tongue-in-cheekly overreaching evil corporations, each racer being a spokesperson for one of them. You can see their advertisements on the loading screens. It's pretty charming, actually. Now, the gameplay is pretty good, but there's a deceptively steep learning curve to it. You collect vials of iridium to fill up this meter in the top left corner. The green can be used for body checking opponents with L2 and R2, which at first I thought was just a really bad quick turn. And when you filled up enough green, you also get some red, which can make you run faster if you repeatedly tap the X button as opposed to holding it to accelerate. The tapping doesn't seem to abide by Mario Party logic whereby more presses equal more steps, so no need to break your thumb over this boost. You can also jump with R1 and use items with L1. Jumping only comes in handy when avoiding obstacles as it eats some of your momentum, and the items are about what you'd expect, though the balancing could be better. One other thing to mention, there are standard races that play as you'd expect, but there are also survival races where in every lap the racer in last place is eliminated. Not much to say about it, I just think it's neat. In terms of controls, mechanics, and even graphical style, I think I still like Running Wild better. Characters too, oddly enough. I mean, them and the Iridium Runners cast are on equal playing field in terms of fetish baiting.
Well, I have to save my ass.
But at the end of the day, animal caricatures are more memorable than these late 2000s ass generic sci-fi dudes. Still, Iridium Runners definitely gets bonus points for world building. The game would probably be more fun if I had human players to race against, though I guess the same could be said about all these games, come to think of it. Plus, Iridium Runners' steep learning curve might deter your Mario Kart-loving friends from bothering with these jumpsuit-wearing nobodies.
Looking back at all these 3D on-foot racers has further cemented my belief that there are no bad ideas, just bad execution. I can safely say it's the case for all these titles, except maybe Pen, that a good sequel that improves on the initial game's ideas might make any of these IPs the Mario Kart equivalent of its genre. But as it stands, I don't think that elusive genre pinnacle currently exists for 3D on-foot racers. Still, that doesn't necessarily mean it won't eventually exist.
Whether it's as a reboot of Mad Dash Racing or Rayman Arena, a reimagining of Running Wild or Micromaniacs, or even a sequel to Iridium Runners or Sonic R, any one of these series has the potential to define an entire subset of the gaming medium. Heck, the possibility also exists that a major publisher or even indie developer will create an entirely new on-foot racer that does the deed. It's stuff like this that keeps me engaged in gaming as a hobby. Even when the vast majority of what's made today doesn't appeal to me, there's still loads of history to look back on, and history repeats itself. There's an axiom in physics that goes something like, if something has happened, that means it can happen. So even though I don't hold my breath in anticipation of a new F-Zero, Custom Robo, basically any old PlayStation franchise, or even 3D on-foot racing games, I like to shine a spotlight on this kind of stuff and let people know that of all the things that can happen in the modern gaming scene, the return of this kind of stuff is what I'd like to see the most.
But what do you think? Would you be willing to try any of these games we covered today? Would you be excited to see any of these ideas return for a new game? Do you not care about racing games at all, let alone on-foot ones, and only watch through this video hoping to see me get up to some silly sock antics? If that's the case, fine. I'll leave you with something worth leaving a like and subscribe over.
I don't even remember what joke I was trying to make. Thank you all for watching and being so patient. I know that this video took a while to come out, but hopefully it was worth it. I have to give a major thank you to my Patreon supporters who you can see on screen right now and who you can join for as little as $1 a month. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and until next time, I will see you the next time I see you. Bye-bye, everybody.